Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. So today we're tackling something, pretty universal, pretty essential, sleep and relaxation. I mean, you'd think by now as adults we'd kind of have this figured out, but it turns out there's still a lot to learn. And what's really fascinating is that our source material for this deep dive actually comes from, get this, an English language learning podcast called English Unlocked.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how even materials designed for people learning a new language can actually offer these really practical insights that everyone can benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. We talk about sleep all the time, right? With our friends, our family, even our doctors. But do we really have the vocabulary to express what's really going on? And that's where English Unlocked comes in.
Yeah, it's so important to have the right words to describe our experiences, right? It really empowers us. Like, you think about it, if you use a term like sleep debt, that's way more impactful than just saying, I'm tired.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like you're kind of taking ownership of your sleep, understanding the science behind it. And I think that leads to better communication, not just with others, but with yourself, too.
Exactly. And English Unlocked really dives into this vocabulary, offering terms like, insomnia, restless. We've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But having the words to actually describe those feelings makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you're validating your experience, right? You're giving it a name, like, okay, this is what's happening. And what I also liked is that they go beyond just the negative stuff, like insomnia. They introduce words like deep sleep and unwind, which just sound amazing, don't they?
Yeah, they're almost aspirational, right? Like you're setting this goal for yourself to achieve that level of relaxation.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just single words. The podcast actually offers this whole range of practical phrases for real life situations.
I was really surprised by how relatable some of the examples were. Things like, I'm a light sleeper, or I've been having trouble falling asleep lately. I can totally see myself saying those things to a friend.
I know, right? And the beauty of these phrases is that they're so universal. It doesn't matter what your culture is, what language you speak, you can connect with other people who might be going through the same thing.
Totally. And it's not just about describing your sleep habits. They also provide phrases for talking about relaxation techniques, which is so important. Like, yoga helps me relax, or I feel so much better after a good night's sleep. These are all things we can actually use in our daily conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Instead of just saying, I'm stressed, you can actually articulate, what helps you unwind. And it might even invite other people to share their experiences and maybe even spark, a new relaxation routine.
Yeah, it's like you're creating this whole dialogue around well-being, which I think is so important these days, with everything going on. And it could even lead to some cool cultural exchanges, like learning about different relaxation techniques from around the world.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of culture, that's another thing the podcast touches on, is that sleep habits and relaxation techniques can be really different depending on where you're from.
Yeah, totally. I remember reading about how in some cultures, siestas are a normal part of the day.
Yeah.
And then in other cultures, it's all about going to bed super early. It's interesting, right?
It is. It really highlights that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to sleep and relaxation.
For sure. And I think that's why having a good vocabulary is even more important. So you can really express those nuances of your own sleep habits.
Yeah.
But then also understand other people's habits, even if they're totally different from yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's opening up a whole new world of communication, right? And the podcast goes on to give some really great tips for how to actually have those conversations effectively.
Yeah. One of the biggest things they stress is just being honest. They really encourage listeners to be open about, their struggles with sleep. And they make this point that it's totally normal. Everyone experiences challenges. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah. That really resonated with me. I feel like there's this pressure sometimes to pretend we're all getting enough sleep, even when we're not. So I think being honest about it can really help break down that stigma and, create space for some more genuine connection.
Yeah, I agree. And, being open about our struggles can also help us get advice and support from people who've maybe been in similar situations. And you know what? English Unlock even provides some phrases that we can use for that.
Oh, right. Do you have any tips for falling asleep faster? That's something I need to ask more often. I'm always trying all these different things. I'm sure other people have some great advice too.
Yeah, exactly. And on the flip side, they also give phrases for sharing your own tips too. It's really about creating that community of support, which is so important.
Yeah, it is. It's empowering to realize that you can help other people while also getting help yourself. And it doesn't have to be like this super complicated advice. Sometimes just sharing like what works for you can be super valuable. Like, avoiding screens before bed helps me sleep better, or taking a warm bath is my go-to for relaxing. Just little things like that.
Yeah, totally. Simple tips can be the most effective, and it creates this like shared experience, which I think is really cool. And another tip from the podcast that I found interesting was about using descriptive language. They encourage listeners to go beyond just, basic statements like I'm tired and really try to paint a picture of like what they're experiencing.
Right. I noticed they were using words like restful and calm and refreshing. It's like you're almost inviting the other person to feel what you're feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just about like the physical sensations. It's about conveying the emotional impact of, getting a good night's sleep or like the lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And it can be helpful for those times when you're trying to explain like a sleep issue to your doctor or something. Using really precise language can help make sure they understand exactly what you're going through.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think using more vivid language can help make those conversations, less clinical and more personal, which can make a big difference. It's like you're sharing a story, not just reciting symptoms, which nobody wants to do.
Totally. Storytelling is so powerful for connection. And English Unlocked actually takes it a step further. They suggest using analogies, which I thought was really cool. You remember that example they gave? I slept like a log.
Oh, yeah. I love that one.
It's so relatable, right?
It is. And it's kind of funny, too.
Yeah.
It's way more engaging than just saying, I slept well.
100%. And it shows that, you don't have to be a poet to use descriptive language. Sometimes a simple analogy can make a huge difference.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's like it injects some personality into your communication, too. It helps people remember what you said, which is always a good thing.
Exactly. And this brings us to another takeaway from the podcast, which is asking questions. They really emphasize that this is key for active listening and having a more, I guess, meaningful conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not just about, talking about your own sleep, but you're inviting the other person to share their experiences and perspectives. It's a way of showing that you're genuinely interested and that, you want to create a more balanced dialogue.
Exactly. And asking questions also opens up opportunities for learning. Like you might discover a new relaxation technique you've never heard of before, or gain insights into, different cultural approaches to sleep. It's a good reminder that even on a topic as personal as sleep, there's always something new to learn.
Right. I love that they also encourage listeners to share their own experiences, like, saying, hey, I've been there too, and creating that sense of community. It's a good reminder that you're not alone in your struggles, no matter how unique they might seem.
Right. And sharing personal experiences also helps normalize conversations about sleep. By talking openly about our challenges, we kind of break down those stigmas and create an environment where people feel more comfortable seeking help and supporting each other. And English Unlocked actually dives into some of the common mistakes that people make when talking about sleep and relaxation, but they do it in a way that's like really helpful and not judgmental at all.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, we've all been there. We all make mistakes. It's part of the process.
Sure.
And their first point is about avoiding these like super complicated explanations. Like you don't need to go into a whole lecture about sleep cycles when you're just chatting with a friend.
Right. Keep it simple, especially in casual conversation. Like you want to make sure your message is clear. You're not overwhelming the other person. The goal is to connect, not to impress them with all your knowledge about sleep science.
Right, exactly. And they also caution against being too vague. Like instead of just saying, I can't sleep, be more specific.
Yeah.
Like I've been having trouble falling asleep because of work stress or whatever it is.
Right. Specificity allows the other person to really understand your situation more fully and offer like more relevant advice or support.
Yeah.
And it also helps you kind of pinpoint, the root of the problem, which can be super helpful for finding a solution.
Right. It's like you're giving them the pieces to help you solve the puzzle rather than just saying, hey, my puzzle's broken.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that leads to like more meaningful conversations and, maybe even some helpful solutions down the road.
Absolutely. Speaking of solutions, the podcast highlights another common mistake, which is ignoring cultural differences. They really emphasize that sleep habits and relaxation techniques can vary widely across cultures, and it's important to be mindful of that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's so easy to just assume that everybody approaches sleep the same way that we do, but that's not always the case. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's totally fine. It's more about like understanding those differences and respecting them.
Right.
And maybe even learning from each other and, kind of expanding our own little sleep and relaxation toolkits.
Exactly, yeah. It's so fascinating how something as, like, I guess, basic as sleep can open up this whole world of, like, different cultural perspectives and practices.
Totally. So it seems like this English language learning podcast, English Unlock, has given us like way more than just vocabulary. It's really been like this deep dive into communication and connection, and it's all centered around something that we all experience, right? Sleep and relaxation.
Yeah, it really is. It's a good reminder that sometimes, like, the most unexpected sources can give us really valuable insights. And by, like, focusing on language, they've really highlighted those universal aspects of sleep and relaxation, making it relevant to everyone, no matter what their background is.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about all the ways that I can use these tips and phrases in my own conversations. It's like I've been given this whole new set of tools to navigate this like essential part of my life.
That's great to hear. And remember, even those small changes in how you communicate can have a really big impact. Like being more mindful of the language you use, using descriptive terms, asking questions. These are all steps toward having more meaningful conversations about sleep and relaxation.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so glad we dug into English Unlocked today. It's been a real eye-opener.
Me too.
Um,
And here's a final thought-provoking point from the podcast that they left us with. Even if you aren't learning English, thinking about how you would describe your sleep and relaxation habits in another language, that can actually offer some really interesting new insights.
oh, wow. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it kind of forces you to consider these different perspectives and maybe even unlock some new ways of understanding your own experiences.
Yeah, it's like looking at yourself in a different mirror, like you're
Yeah.
getting this whole fresh perspective. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that and hopefully put some of these great tips into practice. Sleep well, everyone.
Sweet dreams.